say something that we also are going to be joined by John Michael Schur from Train Tire Project, and here he comes. Yay! Yay! Great. Lori, thank you.
I'm going to stand just because I know I'm a low talker, so it's not that I want you to see my earrings, just because I know most people are always asking me to speak up. But I think from the beginning of this talk and from reading about what this talk was about, what my story really is a good example of what's been said here. So I'm just going to tell a little bit about my story and how it really fits into really what the core of tonight's talk is about, is the Scenius thing. I was raised mostly in San Diego, which, as you probably know, is a huge city. And from there, everyone says San Diego, but nobody was actually raised in San Diego. You're in some city or town that's part of San Diego, and people call it San Diego. You're just a blip on the map of this big lump of thing in Southern California. And then I moved to a bigger lump in Northern California, and I went to college in San Francisco. Once again, a tiny little blip. I did actually live in San Francisco proper, so I'm one of the few people that can say I lived in San Francisco, but really, all this stuff, it's a huge city. And then I moved up to Seattle, which is in the Northwest, another huge, fantastic city of so many things that are happening. People come and go all the time, and you're part of something great. And then I met a wonderful man who brought me to Idaho, and his mother gave me the best tour of the whole state, his mother and stepfather. And we were here for 3 days, and I think we'd been dating for like 2 months. And at the end of our visit, he said, so what'd you think? I said, well, I got this job interview to move to Boise. Do you want to come with me? And because what I identified with in Boise right away is that the little things. I think people laughed at me because I said, guess what I did today? I drove up to the grocery store, and I went in, and I got my stuff, and I got back in the car, and I drove home, and it took me like 10 minutes. And that's it's a silly little example, but the thing that really charmed me is that for the first time in my life, I felt like I was somewhere where I could affect change. I could meet people that are actually doing the amazing things that you see in bigger cities. And all the places that I grew up and all the places that I lived, I just felt like, a blip on the map. All these great things that are happening had already happened. The things that were changing these great cities were huge Titanics. You don't turn the Titanic when you're just, a blip on the ship. So I felt like for the first time in my life, I'm somewhere where I can actually not feel impossibly competed against, not feel like I just needed to. I got a job as an accountant out of college because I felt like no matter what I wanted to do in my life, I needed to earn a living, and there's no real way that I was a creative person that could pursue something that was big and beyond anything other than that, because I'm just one person in a huge city. I mean, I'll be lucky if I raise my kids and they go to a good school and they all do well in sports, and maybe they're in the band. I was in the band. But you move to Boise, and I for the first time felt like I could make this place what I think it could be based on maybe the seed that I'm going to find in myself someday. I turned 40 this year, and I can say for the first time in my life, I felt like I do have that seed. And it took that many years of experiences and rediscovering yourself and things happening for me to actually believe and feel lucky enough that I had something like that in me. But I think that could only have happened here. So a little background on how that happened. Like I said, I have an accounting degree. I was a tax CPA for 5 years, and then we moved here, and my husband said, what do you want to do today? And I said, I'm going to go to work. And he was like, oh yeah. And so I decided, through the help of my wonderful family here, that I should do something different and more creative, and I became an insurance agent. Actually, there are many of my clients in this room, some of my favorite people, and I still do that today. And what I love about that, besides being able to raise my kids a lot myself instead of having to send them to daycare, was that all the amazing people I get to meet in this city. It's just mind-blowing that after 10 years, I have met so many of you through so many different channels, and now we're all part of each other's world in a different way. And that doesn't happen in a city maybe it does to me if you're this great person that came out of the womb just super creative and entrepreneurial, and you're one of those comments of people, but I came out feeling like a pretty normal person, and I was going to do my studying, and I was going to get my good grades, and I was going to do the right thing all the time. But here, I feel like you could be that person if you just let it be. And my husband was one of those people that taught me to not be afraid of things, and I will forever be grateful to him for that. And we lived a very wonderful, normal Boise life for 10 years, and then something horrible happened, and that, I think, removed the last bit of fear of normal things. Fear of things that you shouldn't be afraid of. Like, if not me, who is it going to be that does these things that come across your path? Well, he always said, why not you? And for the first time in my life, I thought, well, you're right. If it's not me, then it will be somebody else, and it may as well be me. So in my struggling to change things and re-look at life and figure out how to move forward, people always say things happen for a reason, which you should never say to anybody. What I believe is that you're given your lot in life, and you are who you are is what you decide to do with it, and who you decide to make yourself because of it. And so in my just floundering through life, I went back to something that I was passionate about. I hid in music for a while, just listening to music, and I became very frustrated that all the bands that I wanted to see, I really couldn't see because they were always hitting the cities that were close to us but not here. And many of them told me when I would walk right up to them and talk to them, because I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd say, hi, my name is Lori, I love your music, after the show, and they'd start to talk to you. And the thing they always said is, we love Boise, we stop there all the time, but really there's nowhere to play there, and no one really ever bothers to try and get us to play there, so we just stop and we stay. Look, I got this tattoo in Boise. And there's so many great things about your city, and I'm like, I know. And so I was talking to a really good new friend of mine who is getting his MBA, and he said, well, let's change that. If it's not you, and this, I'll never forget when he said this to me, and he didn't even think anything of it. If it's not you, if it's not us, it'll be somebody. So why not us? So we wrote a business plan. We actually got it approved as a internship for his MBA to write a business plan to create the kind of venue and the kind of business plan to support these bands that we wanted to see that nobody else would book here. So we did the research, and that's how I do things. I do my research, and I build it all, and I'm very analytical. That's the CPA in me. And then we had this business plan, and it was like, well, now what? And so he said, well, the first step in the business plan is to start producing some shows. Oh, okay. So we actually emailed some of the agents for some of our bands that we really wanted to hear at that point in time, and they sent us very good feedback. They said, no one's going to give you a band that they're representing if you've never done this before, so go find someone that's doing this in your community. And only in Boise can you go out there and go, hey, I see you're producing some shows. Can we talk about this thing we want to do? And they'll sit down with you and they'll say, sure. And that person was Eric Gilbert, who is in one of my favorite local bands, Finn Riggins, and he was working in a pizza shop, and he was booking a few bands around town, and what else was he doing? And so, of course, he knew a lot of bands, and he said, here's this idea that I had. I wanted to, after South by Southwest, there's all this talent coming up from Austin, this music festival in Austin that's huge, and it's all emerging artists, and they're all the kind of bands that we wanted to see here. He said, let me just start calling and emailing and getting as many of them coming up the road as we can, and we'll have an urban music festival. And so Drew and I looked at each other and we're like, sure, that fits right into our business plan. It's written right here, produce some shows. And so yeah, not creative at all. But what changed in this seed that's in me is the fact that I did what Faisal talks about. I said, well, we need someone who can figure out how to set up a main stage. Do you know someone like that? Oh yeah, John, he's really good at that. Or now we need someone who knows about performance artists. Well, Bronwyn, she knows all those guys. She's good. So we started bringing in all the people in this community that were really good at what they did, and we said, will you do this for this purpose? And what was interesting is like the whole I to we thing. There's so many people in this town producing shows, and they're all afraid of each other, and they all, they saw us as this competitive weird thing at first, and we just started saying, hey, you're good at this. Can you come over here and do that part of this for us? And this is a festival for Boise. We want to show all these bands a really good time. We want to promote them really well. We want to show them how great Boise is, and we want to show all the music fans in Boise how great all these bands are, that these emerging artists that in 2 years they're not going to be able to get 400 yards from. And that's when you present it to people like that and you say, hey, those cookies that you make that everybody in town loves, can you bring them to these 150 bands, and can you bring your what is it that we have, wooden sunglasses? Everybody, just bring what's good about Boise and show all of these. 150 bands, and 20% of our pass holders ended up being from out of town. So, people always said, it went so well, how did you get it all coordinated? Well, I think that I'm not a creative person, but I'm lucky enough to facilitate a group of people that are able to come in and do what they're really good at. And so, I feel when people say, oh, you founded this music festival, I always laugh. I always feel so lucky every day that I get to work with all these people. I almost get excited when they say we have this need, because then we get to go out and find someone that's really good at that and let them do that. And that's I think, why it's gone so well. And Boise is so right for that. It's so full of people. And a big part of it is a big, huge tank of it is this community radio station that was founded about the same time that I was writing this business plan, 89.9 Radio Boise, which is something that I started listening to and realizing there's all these people, there's all these programmers that are doing the same thing that I'm doing. They're sitting up at night and geeking out to music, and they don't have anywhere to see these bands either. So all these people came together and made this festival happen, and I just was one little part of it. What was I going to say? Oh, and yeah, another thing about the I to we part of it is that a lot of people asked why it went so smoothly when so many other festivals have so many problems. Well, we really wanted to show the best of Boise, and we were really using everybody, and I feel like there are so many people in Boise that want to do their own little thing and not work with their community at large to make it happen for Boise, that the city was just like, great, how can we help? And the city is really good at that. They're really good at identifying people working together and bringing out the best in Boise and getting behind them. And that's how we got to this place that we are now. So I'm an insurance agent who started a music festival, and it could only happen in Boise, Idaho.
So I apologize for being late. My name is John Michael Shirt. I'm with Trey McIntyre Project. We did an event tonight at the Basque Center, which was great, well attended, and lots of fun. And I'm a little bit late being here. I caught Faisal and Lori's presentation, and last week I was in Miami for a conference of the best creative placemakers in the nation. So creative placemaking is this terminology that's existing in the dance world or in the arts world right now. But how does a creative organization create a sense of place? How do we be a catalyst for our community to elevate it to something more than it currently is, or something deeper or richer? And it has to rely upon every sector of the community. It can't just be the arts world. It requires music and technology and healthcare and finance and education. So this morning, as a point of reference, I'm a member of a group called The Gang. We loosely title ourselves The Gang. It's a little bit of a funny word, but it's Coach Peterson and myself and our sheriff, Mr. Rainey, and Bob Locken, who runs a tech company in town, and Jamie Cooper from Drake Cooper and Mark Hoffman from the Idaho Shakespeare Festival. And we get together once a month and we talk about these ideas. How can we make Boise a better place? How can we elevate this community? How can we develop it and make it something that we all are proud of? And this morning was my turn at The Gang to lead the meeting, to say, so we alternate, right? We say, whose turn is it to talk about the topic for the day? Sometimes it's just I won't say who it was, but one day, one person's topic was, what about these kids today, basically? What's up with this generation that's coming up, and why do they not have any sort of work ethic? So sometimes it's just a peer group, and we just sit there and literally bitch about the kids coming up. But sometimes we actually get to some constructive criticism and constructive conversation. And today was my turn to talk about what I wanted to talk about. And Rich Raimondi, who's a great guy in town, he was a senior person with HP, and now he runs Bishop Kelly. He's also on the Trey McIntyre Project board. He's also, I think he's on 3,900 other boards in Boise, Idaho, including St. Luke's and the Y and everything in between. But he was my mentor for the day, so he helped me shape my thoughts into something of importance. And we talked about the brand of Boise. Now, brand is obviously a business term. What is a brand? What is this feeling? But for an arts organization, like a dance company like Trey McIntyre Project, we talk about what is the culture? What does it feel like to be a part of something? What does it mean to live something and to really care about it so fully that you just live it through every pore of yourself? Trey McIntyre Project chose Boise in 2008. We moved here. Nobody lived here. We didn't have any staff or dancers who lived in Boise. We moved over 15 people here because we believe that this community, as we've heard about tonight, has the ability to shape itself. It's still a community that has in my words, Boise has not yet entered its golden era. We haven't yet entered this moment of defining factors that say this is what Boise is for the remainder of time. When you think of San Francisco, when you think of Portland, when you think of New York, when you think of Chicago, any major city in America, there's certain things that jump out right away. It just does. You think of San Francisco, it was Gold Rush, and then it was Golden Gate Bridge, and then it was hippie movement, and then it was, there was these things that jump out at you. Boise hasn't necessarily had that. It has to people who have lived here. But to the nation and to the world, we haven't yet said, this is what we are, this is what we care about, this is what we belong to, and this is what we are for the rest of time. So I believe very fully that we are in a position to determine who we are in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm a newcomer. I've been here 5 years. February 1 was my 5-year anniversary moving to Boise. And I literally looked back in my journal. February 1, I moved here from San Francisco and bought a car at Peterson Toyota and bought a house in the North End, and Trey and I set up Trey McIntyre Project. Skip forward 5 years, we've served as Boise's economic development cultural ambassador, Economic Development Cultural Ambassador for 3 years. We represent the city. We travel around the world talking about Boise. Every city that Trey McIntyre Project tours to, there's anywhere from 7 to 15 press pieces done on the company. So when we go to Boston or Amsterdam or Seoul, Korea, or Bogota, there's all these stories done. And we make a point, and we train all of our dancers to talk about Boise, Idaho. What is Boise, Idaho? The beautiful thing is, the most of the world, Boise, Idaho is nothing. They don't know what it is. It's Iowa. Or it's Ohio. I mean, really, and it's so funny because Trey McIntyre Project's never performed in Iowa, but we're performing there next year. And the guy I'm working with and setting this situation up said, people always call us Idaho. I'm like, people always call us Iowa. It's the same thing, back and forth. And we have this relationship of, we have a blank canvas in terms of the nation's perception of what Boise is. Now, those of us who've lived here, I've lived here 5 years, so I can say, those of us who've lived here have experienced what it is to live here. There's a unique culture that is of Boise and of Idaho. There's a unique sense of being, of feeling. And so this morning, the gang and I, Coach Peterson and the sheriff and Mark Hoffland and Bob Locken and Rich Raimondi and Don Kemper from HealthWise sat and thought about, what does it mean to be of Boise? What is our brand? What is our culture? So what is our culture that determines what is our brand? Why do we live here? So any brand expert in the world will lead you through an exercise, which is first determine what is important to you, what is true to you. So what are the 5 factors that determine Boise? We could say relationship to nature. You can be skiing in 20 minutes from your house. You can walk the greenbelt within 5 minutes. You can view nature at any time. That's not true in many cities. So that is important to us. That's something that's true. There's a sense of entrepreneurial spirit here. There's a sense of ownership. There's a sense of generosity. This community donates not just money, but time and energy and effort. As you probably know, we're the most isolated urban area in the continental U.S. So continental means excluding Hawaii and Alaska. We're the most isolated city. No other city is within relation to us. Salt Lake is what, 5 hours? Portland's 6. We're alone. We develop our own ideas. We develop our own sense of purpose and of being. And why does it matter? We want to build something that's of importance to this community, and that's important to us. So Don Kemper coined a really good phrase today. Boise is a place where you can build your... What did he say? He said, you can build the life you want, and you can build the world you want simultaneously. And that's what I think Boise is. You can have the life that you choose to have, but you can at the same time be building a world that you wish existed for everyone else in the world. Every member of Trey McIntyre Project moved here. They moved here because they want to work with Trey. But the added bonus and benefit is they get to live in this community, and they get to be a part of it, and they get to help grow this sense of purpose. So going back to this morning with the gang, we talked about what is the brand of Boise? What are these 5 words that we would describe? Are they relevant? Are they true to Boise? Yes. Okay. What of those 5 words differentiate us from other communities? Well, pretty much every Western community can say they have a great work-life balance and have great connection to nature. So if we're, I don't really care about competing, but if we're trying to differentiate ourselves from Denver, from Portland, from Seattle, what is different about Boise? What is this uniqueness factor? And then more importantly, why is it relevant? Why is it relevant to us who live here? And why is it relevant to the rest of the nation? Why would they care that Boise offers them something that Denver doesn't, or Salt Lake doesn't, or Portland doesn't, or New Orleans doesn't, or New York, or Chicago, or Washington, D.C.? In my opinion, this is not necessarily certified by anyone else. There's still a sense of possibility here. I mean, Lori said it. She's an accountant who launched a music festival, which is a source of pride in this community, and actually being viewed and studied by publications and other music festivals nationwide. Trey McIntyre Project is performing at Bonnaroo this year, and the guy from Bonnaroo said, yeah, you've got this amazing festival going on. You've got the best musicians, you've got really cool stuff happening. Actually, he said shit happening, but I said stuff. And there's something happening in Boise that's of this community. So what does it mean to be relevant to the place that you live? What does it mean to be of Portland, or of New York, or of Miami? So if I say Miami, we all think certain things. There's bright colors and Cubans and all the, and all these things. I was just in Miami last week, so I've got these visions in my head. But, what is it to be of Boise? We haven't yet really said it. We haven't really defined it. We haven't necessarily put it down and exhibited it to others. And maybe we don't want to. There's also a large contingent that says, don't tell anyone about Boise. Keep it quiet. We like it here, and we don't want the masses to move. But I think that we want the right people to move here in terms of we want creatives to move here. And this whole convening today is about who are the creatives that are shaping our future. And everyone has the ability to be a creative. But who are the people in our communities who are really deciding the future of how we evolve as a society? I was just in Miami last week for this conference seminar, and the former mayor of Miami, Manny Diaz, said, as the mayor, I don't really care about your whole process. I just want to know what the next big idea is. I want to know what I should move on. And I met with Mayor Beater this Monday, and I said, so what's the next big idea? He said, I don't know. I look to you to tell me. He looks to the creatives in this community to tell him what's the next step. Boise is still at this really beautiful moment where we can shape what we are in perpetuity. And I feel that very strongly, that in the next 5 years, we will determine our moment in history. And that's not just about legacy, it's also about who do we want to be collectively as a community, as a society. Brahman, I'm calling you out. Brahman's like, I want to move to New Orleans and be a part of the artists. And I was like, go to New Orleans, experience that. I love New Orleans, I go there all the time. I love it, it's a great city. But bring what you know back to Boise. We need to build this creative base of people. And that involves accountants and tech entrepreneurs and conductors and every single other person that's in this room. We need to build this base of people that believe so fully in this community and bring their assets and their resources and their sense of possibility to make us understand we are of value and we are about to determine our own future. And that is a moment that pretty much every major American city wishes they could go back and recapture. When I talk to friends in San Francisco who were there in the 60s, they say San Francisco used to be this really fun, friendly place. People used to care, used to know your neighbor. People said the same thing about Denver, about Portland, Salt Lake, Seattle. Even Los Angeles, once upon a time, had a sense of knowing your neighbor and belonging to something. And Lori talked about living in big cities, and you more gravitate towards your community and your smaller neighborhood. Boise is still a pretty large neighborhood, right? We all feel that. And we have the ability to say, what is it that we care about and we want to happen soon? Because I also feel that if we don't capitalize on this moment in the next 5 years, it will pass us, and we will just define ourselves in a certain way. So my meeting this morning with the gang was very much about what is this idea of who we are. Let's not make it up. Let's actually say, who are we already? What exists when a sheriff and a football coach and a tech entrepreneur and a ballet dancer and an actor and a design firm and a healthcare service provider get together and talk about this idea of importance and relevance in our community? And so I think the big question that I'm asking myself, and I'll ask you tonight, is what is of relevance to you? What matters when you live in this community? When you're walking the green belt, when you're eating downtown, when you're enjoying the things that Boise has to offer? Well, what's relevant? What makes you feel like this is your home and this is your community? What's the thing that when you go away and land back at the Boise airport, you think, I'm home? And now we need to turn that into something of importance that we can collectively share and turn into our zeitgeist, our gestalt, our sense of being, our sense of participation. Gary Rainey, our sheriff, elected a sheriff, was in the meeting today, and he said, you know what? Boise has a sense of generosity. And that's more than just friendliness. That's more than just being kind or knowing your neighbor. There's a sense of generosity. Yes, we have these, there's 5 to 10 founding families at Boise whose names are on things and whatnot, but they actually, most cities have these philanthropic families that still could determine the future of the city, right? They're giving millions of dollars to determine how things are being shaped. And in some ways, we don't have that in Boise. We don't have this strata of wealth compared to other cities. We don't have this upper class and this poverty level. It's a very middle class community that we collectively get to determine where we are going. So the spirit of generosity, I think, is the big takeaway from my meeting this morning, because I think that really is the brand of Boise. And it means a lot of things. It doesn't mean we're all giving money, but it does mean we're all giving time and spirit and energy and participation and devotion. And for someone I'm from Valdosta, Georgia, I've lived in New York and San Francisco and all over, I chose this place as my home because I want to be a part of something that's bigger than me. And I think I caught these two. I apologize, I missed some of the earlier conversations. I imagine that's what was discussed here ad nauseum tonight. And I think that you're all here tonight because you also have a shared interest in how do we make this community something that we already are proud of, but that it continues to prosper. And so the question I would pose is, what is of relevance to you? And do you believe in the spirit of generosity? And how do you exhibit that to make Boise something more than it currently is? Thank you.
8:30, awesome. So we have about a half an hour to engage in dialogue and conversation amongst the panel, but also with all of us together. And so this is our time to engage. Yes,
Lori's gonna
Lori, awesome.
I really want to ask John Michael a question about what you're saying about the spirit of generosity. I think it goes back to what I was trying to explain about living in a big city. Living in a big city can give you a lot, gives people energy of being around.
Can you talk up a little bit more, Laurie?
Yep.
Open up the envelope.
I was just, what John Michael was saying about the spirit of generosity and what I was saying about living in a big city versus somewhere where you can affect change. Everyone gets energy from different places. And I think what I identified with what he was saying is that if you don't have enough in energy and emotional energy in yourself, you don't have that desire or ability to give back. And I feel like living in Boise, it's a small enough community, but a big enough community that you see the same people over and over again, and you realize that we all affect one another. But it's not so strenuous and competitive and exhausting to live here that we don't. I feel like the energy is more circular, where I get so much energy from this community and from just the ability to live here without having so much strain at the end of the day that I feel like giving back to everybody. And I feel like giving my time to the people that I know that created good things for me, and I have that energy, and that's where I feel the difference between a big city where you can't make as much of a difference versus a small town where there isn't a big enough community to create that kind of energy. So I appreciate what he said about generosity, and I feel like this place really allows people to give of oneself. So I don't know if that's what you were getting at, but that's what I took from it.
Personally, I feel that in your sharing your information and the gang getting together and brainstorming and looking at the evolution of how your lives were impacted by moving to this area, and you want to know how to define this area, then to collectively gather information from every citizen in this area, whether it be electronically, whether it be on paper, whatever, let the people define it for you. Glean that information and come up with a genre that would identify Boise.
Did everyone hear what she said? For the most part, yeah. So I'll just ask a question. So the same exercise we did this morning with the gang, what are words, 3, 4, 5 words that you think define this community, that crowdsource? Let's crowdsource some information of what do you think is Boise? Yes, sir.
I have an awful lot of soccer reference, so I'd have to say youth athletics are huge.
Youth athletics. So what does that boil down to one word? It's vitality. It's wholeness. What do you say, sir?
Team spirit.
Team spirit. Youth athletics. Yes.
There's almost a friendly competitiveness involved with it too. Because, the whole point of playing is to compete against somebody else, but at the end of the game, you're still a friend. So
It's camaraderie. It's yeah. What's another word that really jumps out?
Reinvigorating.
What's that?
Reinvigorating.
Reinvigorating.
Yeah. So I'm often a liaison to people. I'm often the Boise guy in a certain event, and I always find that what makes people really latch onto the city is less the things that seem like they're a part of any other community, like the concert or the event, but it's that little adventure that they have, like way late in the evening or randomly at lunch when they just kind of like go to a coffee shop. Like those are those memories that other people from other cities really latch onto, and then they want to go back to Boise because of that.
So go a little bit further. What was that moment? What was that one moment? What made it so Boise specific?
I think it's that people are nice, and that people they'll talk to a random person at a coffee shop, and suddenly there's something very interesting and dynamic about that person in that conversation, or even that they can strike a conversation, and that refreshes, especially if you're like the real cosmopolitan type, it makes them think of new ideas again. And so they oftentimes come to Boise to kind of feel that reinvigorated think tank that Boiseans just naturally have.
Yes, sir.
If I can add to that, just the niceness of people. I had in the end of November, I was in a situation where I didn't know how I was going to get my rent paid. I had quit my job the month before to focus on comedy and doing the stuff that I wanted to do. I was just walking down the street on the phone with a friend, telling him that, where am I going to come up with the rest of this money? What am I going to do? Some guy overheard me talking and gave me the money that I needed to pay the rent. Like, before I even had a chance to ask him his name, he was gone. And it was just like, I'm from Brooklyn, New York originally. That type of stuff does not happen. And I just thought that was phenomenal.
So who's not from Boise in this room? Who wasn't raised here? So that's half the room, right? You all know that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. It doesn't even happen in small town Georgia where I'm from. In small town Georgia they think, oh, that's your business. I'm not going to even listen to what you're saying and not participate.
And he had headphones on. I don't even know how he heard me. I have no idea how he heard me. Like, he said, I'm sorry, I couldn't help but overhearing your, how much do you need? 160. Yeah, here you go. Pay it forward.
So that is Boise. That's a really great anecdote because I've not experienced that same story, but I've experienced, my job is to fundraise, right? And my job is to go and ask people to support this cause. And I found this community to be so supportive. And it doesn't matter the dollar amount, but $2 or $250,000, I found this community to be incredibly supportive when asked and given a reason. And, yeah.